Welcome to the Maundy Thursday reading and reflections. On Maundy Thursday, we remember the meal that Jesus shared with his disciples in the upper room. At the meal, Jesus and his friends would have followed the Jewish Passover custom of eating roast lamb and unleavened bread and drinking red wine. Jesus gave his followers a new commandment to love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. He then washed the feet of his disciples. A reading from John chapter 13, verses 1 to 14. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." I'd like you to take a moment now just to be still as I share a meditation with you from Eddie Askew, and it's from his book, Cross Purposes. Put yourselves among the disciples coming together for supper with Jesus. It's the Passover. Moonlight paints shadows along the narrow street. The doorways shut and dark. You feel your way up the outer staircase, a hand on the rough wall. As you go inside, the door creaks and a little oil lamp glows, giving soft light to the room. Shadows leap across the walls as the small flames flicker in the draught. You wash your hands in the bowl at the door, the water cool as you shake it from your fingers. As you sit down, you hear noises from the city. There are voices in the street, a door slams, and in the distance a dog barks at the moon. There's the smell of food, fresh baked bread, roast lamb, herbs, rough country wine. You feel a bit uncomfortable though. It's not really a party atmosphere. You hadn't wanted to come to Jerusalem. It had seemed too dangerous, but Jesus had insisted. And there'd been an argument at the door about who'd sit where and who was most important. Jesus had intervened. He hadn't raised his voice much, but you could hear the strength in it. He'd left you all in no doubt about how he felt. "I'm here as a servant," he said. That was strange. It made you think. So you kept your eyes down, not yet ready to look directly into his. What does Jesus see as he looks around the room? They're all people he loves, faults and all. Peter, hot-headed. Thomas, a bit cautious. Judas, and you. What does Jesus see in you? Then he moves. You hear water pouring. He takes a towel and a bowl and starts to wash the disciples' feet. John's, Andrew's. Now you realise that he's coming to you. He's going to wash your feet. Think about Jesus kneeling down in front of you, taking your foot. How does it make you feel? And as your eyes meet, what do you want to say to him? And now a reading from Luke's Gospel, chapter 22, verses 39 to 52. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, and being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation." While he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs?" A garden is where the drama of Maundy Thursday evening takes a distressing turn of events. So I felt it would be appropriate to share some thoughts with you while sitting in my garden. Over 3 years of ministry, I'm sure Jesus and the disciples would have become very close friends, looking out for each other, eager to learn from their friend and teacher. Material wealth was not a part of their life. It wasn't their focus. Reaching out and helping others was. They had all made great sacrifices to follow Jesus, leaving behind jobs, families, friends, security. I wonder what sacrifices you've made to be able to follow Jesus. That last Passover meal shared with friends, how must have that felt? The disciples totally unaware of the fate that was to befall their dearest friend. Chatting and laughter would have changed into fear, panic, grief, and then leading to them hiding in an upper room for fear their own lives would be taken. For me, a garden is a place where I feel so close to God. I love to just be, to be able to sit and listen to all the sounds around. It's here that I see so much of God in his design, the way he has made each flower, each tree, the birds, the insects. And at the moment, I'm having the joy of watching tadpoles grow daily in my pond. But for Jesus, the Garden of Gethsemane was not a place of peace. It was a place he chose to come and pray to his Father, where he says, "Not my will, but yours." Kneeling on the ground, touching the very earth, he prayed out in anguish. His prayers poured out from his heart. And this reminded me of a song by Graham Kendrick called The Servant King, where one of the verses says, "There in the garden of tears, my heavy load he chose to bear. His heart with sorrow was torn, yet not my will but yours, he said." Jesus sought solitude to pray to his Father, and he asked his closest disciples to keep watch. Now, I don't know about you, but when I've had a meal with friends and I've had lots to eat and drink, and the evening is getting late, I find it very difficult to stay awake, and I often catch myself nodding off to sleep. So I've got every sympathy for the disciples who were really struggling to stay awake. They so wanted to do what Jesus had asked, but tiredness took over. And then we hear that Jesus, their friend, appeared with a crowd with soldiers. They must have been asking so many questions. Why? What is happening? And through this, Jesus remains calm. He talks to them and offers himself. One of his disciples, Simon Peter, reacts with violence and cuts off the servant of the high priest's ear. Even in this time, Jesus steps forward and touches the man's ear to heal him. Judas betrays Jesus in front of his friends. Such disbelief must have been in their eyes. Their hearts must have felt like they were breaking, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. They loved Jesus so much. Jesus commands us to love one another as he has loved us. Words that speak so powerfully into our lives and communities today. At 8 o'clock tonight, we'll be coming out of our homes to show our thanks and appreciation for the NHS. We can't begin to imagine what life is like for these people on the front line. But we know they're making sacrifices every day to love and care for so many patients. We also need to remember the other key workers, helping to deliver the mail, helping to make sure that we have food, those working in our schools, those volunteering to help the most vulnerable. So many are putting themselves at risk out of love for others. So as we reflect on the sacrifice that Jesus has made for us, let us remember in our prayers all those who have had to make sacrifices during the coronavirus crisis, and for those whose lives will never be the same again. Amen.